Bad Boy, Chapter 11, continued. What attracted me especially to the books was that the poet rose through the ranks of civil servant by taking tests and was appreciated as a poet at the same time that he was a civil servant. Race was taken out of the equation. It seemed a civilized way of conducting one's life. I needed to work and found another job. L. Einstein and Company sold costume jewelry, and I worked there through the Christmas holidays and into the spring. I wrapped, logged, and put the postage on packages of jewelry, which went to stores throughout the country. I read The Foxes of Harrow, a novel by Frank Yerby. At the time I didn't know he was black, and The Well of Loneliness, a novel given me by a shopkeeper on 4th Avenue. I wasn't sure exactly what was going on with the relations in either book, but the conflict and longing between the women in The Well of Loneliness were interesting. My response to my problems was to immerse myself in literature. Books are often touted by librarians as vehicles to carry you far away. I most often saw them as a way of hiding oneself inside the other. What I had to hide was the self who was a reader, who loved poetry. This self was not the real me, but was a very important part of the real me. And this was an idea that people around me could not seem to easily accept. People wanted to look at me and make a quick and simple decision as to who I was. I was big and I played ball and I fought, and those qualities meant, to a lot of people, that I must have a very limited intellectual life. Others were satisfied to label me as a black person and attach to the label any definition they might have as to what that meant. There were those who accepted me as a reader, but then would separate me in their thinking from anything they accepted as black. But my life was filled with the cultural substance of blackness. I lived in Harlem. I truly loved. I went to church there and grew up in the richness of Harlem's colors and smells and the seductive rhythms of its energy. Books, on the other hand, provided a dialogue between me and the authors who had written them. They spoke to me, and I responded not in words, but in appreciation and consideration of their thoughts. More and more I would respond with my own writing. Buying a typewriter was part of the process. It was easy for me to imagine myself hunched over a keyboard, pounding out reams of deathless, hard-boiled prose. I made $14 each week in my part-time job and planned accordingly. Each week I gave $5 to Mama for the household. I used $4 for lunch, school supplies, and transportation, and the remaining $5 also went to Mama to save until I accumulated the $45 I needed for the typewriter. Working for the typewriter got my mind off college. When Eric called the house to ask if I wanted to do something on the weekends, I would say no, that I had to work to get the typewriter. Eric and I still talk from time to time, but things were very difficult between us. In April 1952, by my calculations, I had enough money to buy the typewriter and ask Mama for the money. She didn't have it. She had lost it chasing the numbers. I was crushed. When my dad found out what had happened, he was angry. Mama's betting on the numbers, her chasing dreams, was out of control, and he knew it. She was also growing more and more depressed. She told me that she couldn't see a future for herself. Dad was working as hard as he could, but as in many black families, life had ground down to a bitter struggle for survival. Mama was also drinking heavily. I was filled with the bitterness of not having the typewriter for which I had worked so hard. Dad decided to take on the task of buying me a typewriter. He went to his job and asked the secretary what kind of machine he should buy. She helped him find an old office model Royal in a pawn shop. It had glass sides and looked as if it might have been used to write memos during the Civil War. When he brought it home and put it on the kitchen table, I wouldn't touch it. It was not the machine I imagined, or the machine I had worked so hard for. For the next months I hardly spoke to Mama, or she to me. I think that her hurting me made her feel worse than I felt. She began drinking even more. It was almost May before I finally took the typewriter my father had bought for me into my tiny room. I wrote columns of "I hate this typewriter" and posted them on my walls. I was doing badly in school, as I had expected I would, and so I stopped going. The school sent notes home, and I answered them by writing excuses on the unwanted typewriter and signing my mother's name to them.